Hi, my name is Chad Larkin. I'm DevOps Solution Architect with Early Warning Services in Scottsdale, Arizona. Early Warning Services is a fintech company that provides fraud management and detection services to financial organizations, and we're also the producer of Zelle. I'm excited to be with you today to share with you how we use Chef Infra and Chef Habitat as part of the fabrication of development pipelines to speed up the initiate phase for new development ideas. Today's agenda, we're going to go through a little bit of introduction about who I am. We're going to go through a little bit of background, kind of give some context of the scenario and problem that we were solving. And as we get into the next section, which will be prefabricating success, how Chef Infra and Chef Habitat played a fundamental role in prefabricating projects so that we could speed them to market. Or at least speed them to development and to determine whether or not they were suitable for market. And at the end, we'll run through a little demonstration, we'll run the pipes and get a look at how that actually prefabrication generates all of the code we need to start a new development project. So like I said, my name is Chad Larkin. I'm a DevOps Solution Architect at Early Warning. I was hired there in 2014. But I've been working with Chef Infra since 2012. If there's a mistake that could be made with Chef Infra, I've made it over the time frame. I started working with Chef Habitat in 2018, and we implemented the on-prem builder backed by Artifactory right about 2 weeks after the alpha beta was released out by Chef Salim, and we've been moving forward with that ever since. In my spare time, when I'm not working on automation code and DevOps solutions for Early Warning, I'm a volunteer with Boy Scouts of America, and I work as a Cub Master for a pack, a Scout Master for a troop, and I'm on the National Jamboree staff. The pictures are really my life. I had a wonderful time getting the chef apron last year because that is now in use at all of our cookouts, so it's great. So let's talk about the background of where we're at and the environment that this is in. So when I start talking with people about what we're doing and how we deal with Chef and Habitat, the question I often get is, you're running this where? Yeah, we're in an air-gapped environment. And we're not just air-gapped development from production, we're air-gapped from the world. So getting stuff inside and into our environment becomes really complicated and hard. So utilizing Habitat Builder outside wasn't an option. So on-prem Builder is a huge part of our ability to utilize Habitat and the functions that are in there. And being able to have it backed by Artifactory was fundamental in terms of us being able to move this into a production ready state. Artifactory is our one piece that's allowed to kind of span our air gap installation for artifact transfer. So that was a huge thing. We deal with a lot of tools that require integration inside of our environment for standing this up. And we'll talk a little bit here in a moment about why that's important. But we deal with, we build in a data center that's self-hosted. We deal with vSphere, Serena, a very old version of Serena that uses SOAP, Jira, IP Plan, and a variety of other tools. Our primary development tool set is Bitbucket and Bamboo, and we're actually going to show in the demo all those pieces working as part of the CI process to run out this prefabricated Habitat plans and start a new project. And then we have a bunch of scripting behind and provisioning the bootstraps, and it's kind of our plumber's putty for connecting our pipes and making sure stuff doesn't leak out and we actually get a clean flow through. But I like to go over that because we're not going to touch on a whole bunch of these things, but they're all ancillary parts of this, and they're part of, some of these tools may be part of your environment, or your environment may have other tools in place of these. But when we start talking about Chef plumbing, we have to understand that Chef by itself is one of the tools to make those pipes work, and Infra and Habitat are fundamental inside of making this function at the speed that we want it to. The problem that we were dealing with in where Habitat and Infra became really important was this startup. We were seeing new ideas come up, but before a developer could start working, it was taking 4 to 8 weeks to get them in an environment. Why? They had to submit tickets for source repo locations because that was handled by a different team. They had to submit build plan requests, right, for somebody to build a CI portion for them. That was handled by a different team. We had to deal with server requests and IP requests, deployment plan requests, access requests. They didn't even have access initially. They would have the server built, and then they would have to request access for. And another team for the DevOps group inside of us to help them with the chef code or write the chef code to get their systems up if they needed special conditions. So all of this stuff were tickets that would be generated and would take 4 to 8 weeks. And we needed to look at how could we simplify all of this, right? And speed to market or speed to development so we could define if something was ready for market was critical. So this was the problem that we were solving, and we were wondering why, we'd had new ideas that would just die on the vine and never get implemented or at least tested to see if they were viable for the market. And this was really one of the biggest factors inside of it was how do we get them started? So that led us to what we call prefabricating success. And really it's templating at its core. But templating how? What was the fastest way to do that? Well, we started talking with our developers. What do they need for all of those tickets? And what were all the stuff they needed? This is just 24 of the nearly 50 items that they brought to us and said, hey, I have to have all of this information when I start submitting tickets before I get in to start building. Why do, this is something they don't necessarily have it or keep it, or we've got turnover. And so they're trying to learn this stuff and they're trying to get started building new ideas for market. And they've got to get this information first. So we took this and said, what's really needed? What do we really need that we don't know? And what does it need to be? And so when we looked at it, most of the stuff wasn't really needed. We knew it, we had it, or we knew how to build it. However, we did need a developer to know 7 items that were pertinent to starting a project. One of which was the Bamboo URL that they were going to go to run the project template job to build their project. The other 6 items were the items we needed them to supply to that job in order for it to build out all of the work. And take the templates and move that out so that we could go right to development. Now, the big thing in this is that Chef Infra and Chef Habitat play a fundamental role in these things, and that these were easy to templatize for what we needed to immediately go in to development from these pieces, to be in development in an hour. So those 6 pieces of information, right? We get to our application source repo, our application build plan, that uses Bamboo spec to define the next build plan that will actually build the application using Habitat. We get to a cookbook source repo. Cookbook installs Habitat and configures it for the new app from the application build plan. And it configures the channel that that the application or the Habitat service on the new server is going to look at to pull that in. It creates a cookbook build plan in the CI system that runs the cookbook against Kitchen Dock and tests to make sure that it's valid. So they get their tests for the cookbook right out of the gate. We know what those basic tests are. It includes a policy file that it generates that implements that cookbook, that pulls that application, that defines Habitat to pull that application and, gets that deployed. So now we can bootstrap a new server with a policy file right into Chef and immediately into Chef Infra and immediately at Chef Habitat and then get our new application. It does generate a couple of JIRA tickets. Unfortunately, there are some steps in Bamboo that are still manual. And so we generate JIRA tickets to the correct team to do that. However, with the automated or with the build plan and code in Bamboo Spec, they don't have to build the plan, they just have to connect the source code. And then we submit server build requests, right? Our server build, when it built out a new machine, bootstraps it. Well, inside of that server request, we provide that new policy file that we just generated for the thing, for the new application. So when that new server is built, it comes up with that policy file and the application is immediately deployed out. So that's what we got out of just the 6 bits of information, but it took, you know, kind of reducing that down to find out what did we really need to have. So the big key in all of this is that it was Chef's unique approach with the application delivery that enabled us to reduce all of this application deployment and build release times for our systems from 4 to 8 weeks to an hour. It's a 98% improvement. Being able to define the application requirements and compliance policies as code uniformly using those things across all technologies, we've been able to scale our CI and CD across our entire estate and deliver new innovations to business at an unprecedented rate in the history of early warning. And without those tools to simplify this stuff, the templating process becomes much harder. We've even looked at templating in using other tools, but it wasn't until we had these tools and all those pieces ready, and Chef had those things ready for the enterprise that we were able to actually get to this point, to get that reduction. So in our demo here, we're gonna demonstrate all these things. Actually, unfortunately, today we're not going to be able to create the Jira tickets. The Jira system that I was expecting to be available in our demo environment didn't get stood up, or it's actually having problems. So we'll get through the policy file generation. We'll be able to see all of this stuff and how it works right off of this template build and see it all in place. So,
hey, Chad, can I, sorry to break in a little bit. We're getting a little bit of crackly noise on your connection.
yeah.
So I don't know if you can move a little closer or whatever before you start the next section.
I can see what I can do.
All right, we'll give it a shot. Thank you.
Well, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was just me but Mindy says she's got some too, so we'll see if we can get it fixed.
Yeah, I wish I could say I could solve it, but I believe it's actually a byproduct of the VPN that I have to utilize for my work computer.
Oh, okay. Yep, it might be. All right, yeah. We'll let you go back at it. Thank you.
That's all right. Thanks a bunch. So real quick, I want to go over kind of the structure of the template repo, right? And this is really what it looks like. We have a folder inside of there that has our app source code. We have a folder for our cookbook source code. We have our create project shell script. That's the key. That's the job. That's the actual shell script that the CI job runs to generate everything. And it uses all this other information in here to generate out those templates. So we've prefabricated app source code. We've prefabricated the cookbook source code. We've prefabricated our policy source code. And we use those things to create a new project. So our app source code is pretty simple folder structure. We include inside of here Fortify and the bits to set that up for static code analysis. And then we have Habitat with the default TOML and the default configurations that we set for the Hello World app that is in here as we give them a new project. Now this project's a Spring Boot app based on Maven. So it has all of the pieces that you would expect from Maven. Inside of our Maven folder, there's actually a settings.xml file that we've template out so that, again, we can't reach out to Maven Central. This has to reach into our Artifactory and use the stuff from there. Cookbook source code looks like fairly standard cookbook. Attributes, we do have our Bamboo spec file like we had in the app one. That's our build plan for it. And then all of the pieces and for a cookbook. And then we use kitchen docking YAML because we let them know that this is going to use Dockin and Dockin containers to test the cookbook once the cookbook has been generated, and that happens almost immediately. Policy file source code, this is actually what it looks all of our files that need to be used for templates look like throughout all the template repo. We have a bunch of stuff that's, you know, variableized, and actually we use the percent, all cap percent, because we end up using sed to replace that. It makes it really easy for someone new to understand that this is totally different. Now, it may look a little bit like a Windows, but this is all executing on a Linux machine at this point. So we're using that to identify where we're doing those replacements. And then our create project shell, all of the sections kind of look like this. It generates it, checks out source code, you know, copies the template into that new location, makes a bunch of set edits to the files as it needs, and then pushes it back up. So with that, we're going to get right into running the pipes because it's demo time. So as we move over here, this is the build plan. Those are our 6 bits of information that we didn't need to know: the app name, the build plan key, repo key, those items. But before I actually hit run in here, I'm going to jump over to the source code, and this is the source code that it's actually going to pull and run, and go through and just show a little bit of what some of these things look like. We have our create project shell. Again, this is what it's executing. We have all of our variables that we need to get from the CI system, all of the variable generation that we get into. And again, we saw this piece in the slide, right, where it's generating that code. And like I said, here's where we do a lot of that editing for that framework, and it gets out there. So in the files all kind of look like that. This is our project area for all of our repos right now. You can see we've got our template repo in there, and we've got a chef policy repo. Inside of that chef policy, we've got a placeholder, and we have our policy file from when I tested to make sure that this worked. So hopefully this continues to still work, and we'll be able to see the new ones come in. Out here we've got our habitat, our on-prem builder, showing again our conference tests, and then I've got a supermarket up here which will show the cookbook coming up. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and run that plan. This plan is very quick. Fortunately, it doesn't take a whole long time for this to kick off. And down here, you can see it's actually going through and doing that work and creating it. And we're done. Like that, we get some ASCII art. So from there, we can go back over to that project. And we can just refresh the screen. And see now I've got Cookbook ChefConf 2020. I've got ChefConf 2020, that's my app. And then I've got in policy file, I've got my policy for ChefConf 2020. So these are all of those pieces. And if we look in the side of the policy file, right, here we have our policy file all defined for ChefConf. And here is our definitions for our dev and our QA. So this stuff generated. Now, I'm going to step aside because this is where our JIRA tickets go out to our administrator. So in my off-screen piece here, we're going to make that connection real quick here. And we will be able to go back up here. And there's only my Spring Boot template build right now. But if we get that connection in, real quick. Always fun when you have to do stuff off screen. But this side I'm not allowed to share. And just like that, I've got ChefConf 2020 app out there, and it is already building. right here. So you can see as it's going through that whole piece. Now, while that's doing, I'm also going to go over here and connect up the and connect up that. So you can see that it's gone through and it's installed all the stuff for doing the Maven build. It's verifying that those pieces and it's getting through that build. And at the same time now, we also now have our cookbook, which has also started its first build. And it's run food critical already, and it's now running kitchen test. So here's another part where if you want to edit, because sometimes this can run a little bit longer and jump to the end. We can do that. And now we're just a few minutes into this, and already we're out building that templated Spring Boot app with Habitat in the CI system. It's at a point now where we're running tests for that hello control tests. We have no failures, no errors. Right? We got our build success. We've got a signed artifact. And now we have our wonderful studio exit with successful run. And it's uploading a heart file. And now it's on the static code analysis of this particular one. But if we go in here where we had just our conference tests, and I refresh that, where are you? Let's see. There it is, ChefConf 2020. And you can see that we're already in the unstable channel. And we've got all of our information, right? And there's our piece for the username and the user email that we added. We've got our package name that we've provided. We've got all our transitive pieces for that. Additionally, as we can see that this is done, we've also generated inside of this a deployment plan. Now, inside of Bamboo, the deployment plan is a promotion inside of Habitat. So we're going to assume that all of this, the server is built and all of this stuff is ready to go. We're going to promote this. Looks like my QA environment didn't get created. Well, we'll have to look at what caused that problem. So our cookbook is still out there running. You can see that it's actually running tests. We have this set up so that it builds tests against Chef 12, which is our current active, and Chef 14, which is where the company is headed towards at the moment. We're quite far behind on Chef. But it allows us to create this quickly. And at this point, we've got a policy file that's generated. We've got a heart file that has been generated. We have our cookbook that has been generated that actually installs, goes through and installs Habitat and creates a service. And inside of this service, right, it configures this to point to using the policy file to look for the ChefConf 2020 under the unstable for dev, and then eventually under the channel QA. So with that, that's kind of really what we're doing in prefabricating success. Is we've templated out Chef Infra and Chef Habitat and Chef policy files. We have a CI job that takes 6 bits of information from the developer and then creates an entire project, including source code, build plans, your Habitat pipeline, your policy file. It submits for a new server request that is then bootstrapped to that policy file that deploys stuff out, and it now is pulling stuff directly from that new code. And the developer can now start working right away and have an entire pipeline defined and ready to move. So if they're needing to make changes to code, all they need to do inside of their application project at this point is start going in and making their changes. And if they get in and start updating this information, they'll now get their next version of stuff. For this, we can actually show this whole piece. I'm sorry, this user doesn't have edit. We can actually show the whole piece move through the whole pipeline, and they're ready to go. So with that, I will be glad to answer any questions.